Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host Thomas Sheridan. It's the 29th of July 2015 and we're on the Reality Bytes radio network. I hope you're all keeping well. I forgot to mention this to Paula at the beginning, but before we went on the air, but it'll probably be an extended show here tonight on the Velocity of Now because of, well, some remarkable, incredible things have happened in the recent days. But also with this show, I think something really stunning and amazing is unfolding with the dream experiments. And we'll be some of you know about that, what happened. And we'll be talking about that in the second part of the show. My website is, as well as the a special feature on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is a far more profound novel today than it probably was even back then, and a very synchronistic and powerful novel. And I'll be talking about that and why it's been so, you know, a great impression and a great inspiration for me, but also why it's a very occult-like and very supernatural novel. Beyond, it may even be a work of alchemy, an work of accidental alchemy. But we'll be talking about that later on in the show, as well as not only the reviewing of the dream premonitions that some of you had, but also the latest ones. We've also got some new hits on the QDA minor program, identified some new ones that came in the dream stories, which you've been sending it to me at an enormous rate, and that's okay. Please don't send them to my Facebook private message thing, because I can't get in there. It's so packed with messages right now, I can't get to read most of them. Go to thomassheridanarts@gmx.com and send your stories there, because then I can copy and paste them easy into a Word program, put them into special folders I've created, and then the data mining program can go to work. I also date them as well so we can keep them current. So my website is thomassheridanarts.com. If you want to help me out, you can buy a book there. If you have no money, you can go to my YouTube channel, Thomas Sheridan Arts on YouTube, and just share this video and other videos like it. I know there's ads on them, but hey, I have to make a living too, and I don't have a donate button. I work for a living, and if you want, yeah, that's the way of doing it. I think it's a very small price to pay for what I give you, because quite frankly, there's nobody out there as original as me. People are listening, and what I have a small band of free-thinking, intelligent people, rather than a massive army of people who just want to have their prejudices validated. And I've got a great following, and I'm delighted with that, and I'm delighted what you're listening to the show in enormous numbers, and I really, really appreciate that. And long may this continue on. I hope to be here for you. I hope you'll be here for me. But even if there's only a few people listening to this show, it wouldn't matter. What I'm interested in, or what I'm interested in talking about, is what keeps me here. And if you're enjoying the conversation, I'm really delighted and honoured you're here with me. So, it's been a strange time lately, but just when you think you see the mother of all psyops coming, something like this, the killing of this poor lion in Africa, really drives home to you how dopamine in the human brain is being weaponized against us in order to bring home agendas. Now, this is not a new thing. The last time this happened was when Robin Williams committed suicide. I remember when Robin Williams committed suicide, I got up that morning and there was a few people that mentioned it on Facebook, and the thing was very much like, oh, it's sad he died, I really like Mork and Mindy, or that's sad, I really like the shows that he did, some of the movies he made, which are very good. Normal things. But as the day began to move on, I began to notice that the sadness of the death of Robin Williams was being weaponized, and it was being mobilized. I could actually see on all the various social media networks, Twitter and especially YouTube, and Facebook an operation taking place where before we had any notion of why the man killed himself or anything, it was all about depression and suicide. There was just suddenly thousands and thousands of posts and hundreds of people appeared with depression kills and pictures of Robin Williams. It was weaponized, it was mobilized, and I had no doubt that it was either organized by the American Psychiatric Association to drum up more business for their depression things, or it was run by the pharmaceutical companies who make these SSRIs. But either way, it was turbocharged, and people who are, should we say, are prone to these kind of this kind of bullshit. I'm not saying that Robin Williams' death was bullshit, but you know what I'm talking about, this bullshit. There's these platitudes. They would recycle these memes, and these would recycle over and over again. By mid-afternoon Irish time, Facebook, YouTube and Twitter was in fits of absolute hysterical convulsions over the death of Robin Williams. However, it began with people I'd watched online who had a rational response. Oh, it's very sad. I'm shocked to hear this. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, were screaming and howling all over social media. They had been coached. They had been their actual dopamine levels had been weaponized, and it had been coached all the way through the show and through the day until by the end of the day and went into the next couple of days afterwards, it was nothing more than a Robin Williams post-mortem hysterical mass psychosis. And it was all feeding into this idea that the man killed himself because of depression and all these things. If you have a friend with depression, get them help. If you think you're suffering from depression, get help. And it was absolutely organized, engineered, fed upon by the vampires in corporations and governments who want us all in these SSRIs so we can't fucking think straight for ourselves. And that was the last time I noticed it. And there hadn't been really one since that I was aware of until the slaughter of this line. Now, before I get to the slaughter of this line, Cecil, it's not Cecil, by the way, it's Cecil. That's how the name is pronounced. Before this line was murdered, let me talk about something. These fellas who travel from America mostly, 90% of them from America, I know because I have a friend who used to work for the WWF in the old Rhodesia when he was younger. He was actually in the Rhodesia. The guy is, I think that's 60 or 60 odd now. He was in the old Rhodesian National Army, and he fought in the Civil War there. He was also involved in a military protection program during the Civil War to protect animals that was basically operated by the World Wildlife Fund. And he said to me that it was ridiculous that even at the height of the war, where Zimbabwe, as it was called, Rhodesia was back then, was an extremely dangerous place, they could not stop Americans flying over from killing animals. It was almost like they were addicted. Now let me explain to you why it's predominantly Americans who do this. One word: circumcision. American males are the only Western males outside the Middle East who are circumcised in high percentage numbers. Now this is, I'm not saying all American males do this, but they look down at their horrifically mutilated penis with all the important nerve endings that send an electrical sex charge into a woman when they're having sex, which is an important part of the actual sexual process, because it releases a charge into the woman, but also the woman charges into the man through the nerve endings on the foreskin. Because they're gone, these poor men, and they are unfortunate men. See, it's very easy to sit there and say they're all psychopaths and bloodlust savages, these Americans who go over there. But that's not, you may find that many of them are quite normal guys otherwise than doing these horrific things like shooting animals in Africa. What they're doing is they're compensating for their mutilated penis, and the gun, the what you call the bow or whatever they use to shoot with, they're subconsciously killing the doctor who cut the top of their penis off. This has always been known that circumcision leads to violent behavior. That's why the Egyptians first practiced it, because it's like weaponized feminism. Because if you take sex away from people, the full completeness of sex, it makes them angry. And they discovered years ago, and then the Semitics did that, and that's what circumcision was for. Now, American men, because of the Kellogg Company, have been circumcised on a regular basis since about the early 1900s. And even though lots of Americans are wising up and not circumcising their males, it's still happening at an enormous percentage by any other country's standards. Now, if you look at the American thing, the obsession with guns, it began after that. You see, you did have, you had the Wild West stories in America, but not everyone wanted to have a gun. That was where the Wild West stories were very popular, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And like every other men in the world, they read Wild West stories. It wasn't until the Kellogg's Company and its weird notion of stopping young American boys from masturbating by cutting off their foreskin did the likes of all this idea of violence and sexuality come into it. So you have novels like Mickey Spillane, where he has sex with the chick, and then she double crosses him and she shoots her. Jimmy Cagney, all these gangster movies that started in the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s, beyond, they all have they're double crossing dame, and he shoots her. That's his foreskin. That's his missing foreskin, and that was a compensatory thing. This is why murder rates, handgun rates, shotgun murder rates are off the scale in America compared to anywhere else. The issue begins with circumcision, okay? So you have these, a lot of men most of them wouldn't even know this, okay? And that's why you have things like the NRA. Things like the NRA and all these gun nuts in America, they're a monument, a living murderous monument to the dangers of circumcision. So that's where it initially comes from. So it's very easy for people to sit there and go, oh, these Americans, they'll go hunting in Africa and killing these animals. They're all psychopaths, all of them. Or they're all mindless killers. Yes, some are. But most of them are driven by a sexual dysfunctionality that caused them to want to compensate for a destroyed penis by killing an animal. So that's what it begins with, okay? Now, that will never be addressed, ever, firstly. Now, even with that, what they do they're going over there and killing these animals is fucking disgusting. Like, most American men would never think of doing that. No, it just wouldn't cross them to do so. It's disgusting to them. Now, the way these parks operate, where there's even in America, go to Texas, and they have animal feeders that bring poor little gazelles and other small animals out, and some guy shoots it dead, and they feel like a big man. The reason why they need to feel like a big man is because they're a small man downstairs. You understand? Now, when they get to Africa and kill these animals, it's what happened at that lion is horrible, okay? However, the way they cut the skin, they cut the head off. Now, the psyops began very quickly, okay? Now, but firstly, let's bring this into focus. Lions are vicious killers. They kill about 70 humans a year. Secondly, and they don't eat them, they kill them for fun. And they're poor African kids, a lot of them. Another thing that happens as well is that lions are, when they attack, they're not these noble creatures. They're lazy bastards who go after the young and the sick and the pregnant. It's not uncommon for a lion to attack a pregnant wildebeest or a pregnant zebra in the effort to miscarriage the unborted babe, the unborted infant, in order to eat that. That's not uncommon. This is your noble lion for you. This is not the king of the jungle. This is a savage animal that's just as bad as any other. Now, does that mean we should hunt them up? Of course not. All these animals should be protected. But How many of you who are having psychotic convulsions with your arm, oh Cecil, oh my God, they killed the poor lion, are having a steak for dinner tonight, or a chicken? You see what a fuckhead you are? You see how this weaponized dopamine is operating in your head? I can see you all switching off now. Oh, I hate Sheridan, he's an evil man. Well, fuck you and go away. Because if you can't handle the truth, then there's something wrong with you, and you have no right to be calling yourself a truth seeker. Let me explain something to you. I drove today from here to Ballina, from Ballina to Sligo, and Sligo back in a loop. I saw on the roads 4 dead cats. 2 black ones and 2 tabbies, with their heads and their legs and everything mashed into the ground. All I could think about was my 3 cats at home. And how these poor cats that get hit by the car don't have families, no one to take care of them, no one to love them. Now, and then a lion in Africa, where are the people? Why aren't you adopting these cats that are on the streets? Instead of pouring your psychosis that's been invented by the media into a lion on thousands of miles away that you never heard of until yesterday. Another one. This planet. Now, all you New Agers, you're going to your yonnies are going to fucking explode now. But let me explain something to you, okay? Take the fucking the bong out of your face for a moment, okay? This planet is a machine of absolute carnage. It's not, you may sit there going, circle of life, and all this crap. 56 billion, not million, billion. 56 billion animals are killed by agriculture for food every single year on this planet. 56 billion. Always get organic when I can, but I'm a meat eater. I'm free range. Lucky I live in where I can get it. But just think about that. It really brings Cecil into your convulsions over that into focus. Another one. All these celebrities coming forward. What about the thousands of animals skinned alive by the fashion industry? What about the thousands of animals who have shampoo derived by cosmetic industries? And then we have to listen to these fucking wagon supermodels all going on about Cecil. So the psyop begins, right? You're all, if you're all in with the psyops. Psyop number 1. Why is this motherfucker dentist any more evil than the royal families of Europe and the aristocrats of Europe who've been killing these animals in an industrial number right up to today? Oh, you've forgotten about them, haven't you? You've forgotten about the pictures of all the royals with their dead animals next to them. There are mountains of dead animals. King Carlos of Spain, there's pictures of him all over the place, fucking elephants dead all around him. You've forgotten about him, haven't you? You've forgotten about them. You've forgotten about the royals who killed the sport of kings when they love nothing more than seeing foxes ripped to bits. And they abort their young as they're being ripped alive. Oh, they love nothing better than that. And they blood their children in the aborted fetuses of foxes. It's no good tradition. You forgot about them, haven't you? Oh, you have. So what do you want now? We want to protect the animals. We want to protect the animals. So it can't happen again. Well, who's in charge of that? The World Wildlife Fund. And who's running the World Wildlife Fund? Stop killing lions. Stop killing lions. And then he writes underneath it, and in comes the psyop. Real men join the military instead. PSYOP number 2. PSYOP number 3. We were able to track down the dickhead dentist because a GPS chip was inside the line. We could have got our Madeleine McCann, if she had a chip in her. The GPS industry got the greatest promotion just now. They couldn't. They're sitting there rubbing their hands on all these GPS. These chip companies got these chip companies, Ferry Chip and all them. Yeah, couldn't pay for that. There's another one for you. Another one is they're going to... Well, let's talk about... The animal's name was Cecil, right? That part of the world is called Zimbabwe. Before that, it was called Rhodesia. Now, Rhodesia wasn't just when it was founded by Cecil Rhodes. Imagine naming a huge chunk of Africa after yourself. That's what this piece of shit. Now, remember, Hillary Clinton will jump in now. She's a Rhodes scholar and talk about how horrible it is. But it's okay to kill Libyans for oil and stuff like that. Now, Cecil Rhodes, it wasn't only Rhodesia or present-day Zimbabwe, which is a piece of shit country. It was the worst example of socialism you could ever imagine. But it was also Tanzania. In fact, it was the whole Kimberley range. The whole Kimberley, I know most of you have never heard of it, is a mineral-rich diamond range right across the areas where these happen. And many of these areas where the wildlife are protected, the only reason the WWF has protected them is because Prince Philip has told his City of London friends that their diamond fields won't have any access to humans, and the likes of De Beers and all those scumbags in that area will have exclusive access to the diamonds. Those areas are so diamond rich that they're literally on the ground, and that's why they have been declared wildlife zones and humans have been shipped out. And then you may ask yourself, but isn't that a good thing for the animals? Isn't that a good thing for the animals? Well, let me explain to you a news story from Zimbabwe in 2008. And all of you who are suddenly, you're all hyped up now for Cecil. Listen carefully to what I'm going to read. And then let's see if we can alter your dopamine levels that the mass media has controlled in you while you call everyone else sheeple. Soldiers tell of Zimbabwe diamond field massacre. This is from the BBC. Soldiers and paramilitary police from Zimbabwe have broken ranks to speak out about a 2008 operation in which civilians working in the Maranga diamond field were massacred. Some of those involved in the attacks have told BBC Panorama that the civilians were encircled, trapped and fired upon with automatic weapons. In the end, there was nowhere out. Civilians who were present during the attacks in Cecil the Lion were gunned down as they attempted to flee in panic. Its purpose was to clear the diamond fields of freelance diamond diggers. That means poor Zimbabwe African people who have been failed by that Mugabe and his shithead government and all were trying to find these diamonds in order to try and get, have a decent life, prospectors, right? But in lands where the World Wildlife Funds puts more emphasis on insects than it does on people, 1,500 soldiers took part in the operation. It was known as Operation Hadakozoe, which translates as "You shall never return." Now the Zimbabwe government is who did this, right? Some Orang diamonds are now starting to appear in the world markets because of this Kimberley process, the company that runs them. And these Kimberley diamonds, remember I said the Kimberley range, mineral rich. They're now called blood diamonds on the international market, and they're getting a higher price because they were probably shot out the hand of an African person holding them. The massacre investigated by the BBC took place in late October 2008 when Zimbabwe was in the depths of an economic crisis. That's because they had this fucked up socialism that they had there. Thousands of civilians had flocked to the diamond fields in the hope of finding gems. Among the victims were women and children, some working in a makeshift market which had sprung up to sell food and clothes to the miners. Unknown to them, several weeks before the killings began, the military had started laying a circular trap around the civilians. Listen to this, you are so upset about the line. Listen to this. They laid strings of mines and ultimately stationed armoured vehicles, mounted soldiers, and a full infantry battalion in a circular pattern around the area. In the end, there was no way out. Multiple and civilian witnesses said soldiers fired down on them from helicopters. 20 to 30 people would die every day. I'm just talking about the ones I saw with my own eyes, said one officer. Several people told of seeing groups of bodies left in shallow graves in the diamond fields or loosely covered with leaves. Many civilians were severely mauled by trained dog units. Two told the BBC the dogs bit them on the testicles while soldiers and police looked on. Vumbai, a 27-year-old mother of two, was dragged into the bush and raped by a soldier. Then he raped me. I could hear them laughing and screaming. The BBC has confirmed that one mass grave has been found containing between 69 and 105 bodies. A man who witnessed the burial said the body parts were packed in black plastic bags and you could actually see the bones piercing through the plastic. Blood was dripping everywhere. It was disgusting. But you're all upset about Cecil the Lion. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of this. You can look this up for yourself. But doesn't that just put it into perspective? Why are you not having hysterical convulsions over that? Why don't you give a shit about these people? Why isn't all the top newspapers reporting that this happened in Sicily? Why isn't Jimmy Kimmel crying his eyes out on TV over these thousands of Zimbabweans who were slaughtered, who were trying to get diamonds in order to feed themselves, to escape starvation? Why? And then Robert Mugabe gets invited to the royal wedding afterwards. I was watching Facebook today, and I'm just holding my head in my hands at all these people I thought were awake, and they fall for it over and over and over and over again. It never stops because you cannot. You still have read my book, The Amble of the Psyche, and you'll see there's a way how to avoid this. You put the brakes on when they start firing you up. Your dopamine, your adrenaline, your norepinephrine, and all your neurobrain chemicals are an enormous commercial asset that the media fire up in order to get money off you. But there's nothing for this. But you're all, and then, it was ridiculous. I heard people today saying they should have a Live Aid style concert for him. I mean, what next? The bleeding state funeral? Like the one for Diana? With Elton John? And it seemed to me like I lived my life like a gerbil in my ass, never knowing which way to turn to till my wind was past. Is that what you want? A state funeral. Yeah, and just like Diana, for a lion. Big concert at Wembley Stadium. We get Bob Geldof to organise it. Lion Aid. Just give me the fucking money. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Yes, it's disgusting. Yes, it's horrible. Yes, it makes me ill that people have to do this, but I understand where it comes from. It comes from circumcision and insanity. It's fed by the media and it serves all kinds of agendas. In this case, the pro-microchipping agenda. Arnold Schwarzenegger, that piece of fucking crap, telling people that a real man should join the military and kill humans instead. And then real horrors that take place in Zimbabwe, like the murder of these people in the Kimberley Diamond Ranges, is completely ignored. You don't get upset about that. And it's also part of the over there psyop. Those of you who you see me talking about my work into indigenous religion. We don't need Middle Eastern religion. Our spirituality, we have our own. They always have you looking elsewhere, over there. I look over there. Never in your own neighbourhood, but always on the other side of the world when it suits them. Anyway, that's enough about that. Just don't fall for that shit ever again. It's depressing to watch. It's this weaponized dopamine hysteria mobilized by policy strategists, think tanks, and social engineers to whip you up for their own aims in the end. Now, on with the rest of the show. A couple of weeks ago, I gave the initial data that had been picked up and the common phrases and terms that have been picked up on the data mining on the first round of dreams you sent me. And what happened was only two things really stood out that were repeated more than twice. One was four people, I think it was either three or no, it's four, said they had a dream about Barcelona and they'd never been there. Now we got a 100% hit on that because there was the other day there was a weird shooting in the tourist district of Barcelona that made world headlines. A friend of mine who's there at the moment, I'm not lying, just contacted me tonight and told me that it is a bit of a weird story. She actually went there with her kids when the thing started on the day, literally right before the shootings, or after the shootings happened. Gunmen went into a posh restaurant and it looked like, at first it was reported as a kidnapping that went wrong. Then they hunted them down like terrorists, but it was a big story. And then later on, they said it was a gangland hit, but no one. It's still no one knows. It may well have been politically motivated. Remember, the Catalan there is elements within the Catalan who want freedom from Spain, and there's also political interest there as well. And so, but that was a hit. We actually got that. Now, what's amazing about that is that you guys did this. You guys delivered this. I'm not like some shithead around the Ouija board making up stories about getting messages from myself in the future, making predictions. I'm not channeling. I'm not one of these types. It's nothing to even to do with me. All I'm doing, and it's totally unbunkable. Just listen to the show. You guys said that there was going to be an event in Barcelona that would make the world, and there was. So it's undebunkable. It's absolutely. So well done, you guys. And my feeling about this stuff is that the more we do it, the more accurate we will get. Because I discovered that with my dream journals over the years when I've been doing them, is that you might get one or two close revelations within a week or two, but after, say, 6 months, a whole narrative and a picture evolves that blows your mind. So we're embarking on something fantastic here. Absolutely fantastic. So we made two predictions, you guys. Your first premonition in your dreams was something to do with China. We don't know if anything happened. Doesn't look like it. It's a tricky one because China is such a powerful country today. And Barcelona. We got an absolute hit with Barcelona. China, we don't know, but we'll see what goes on. So it's incredible. It's just incredible. So about 6 or 7 people emailed me at the same time when the Barcelona event took place. We never hear much on the news internationally about Barcelona. This got major news worldwide. I think because the initial kidnapping or the hit was on somebody very important and they played it down. Maybe even a member of the Spanish royal family. We don't know. Now, this week, we'll do it every 2 weeks. So this 2-week prediction or premonition you guys had, I ran through them all last night. I was up till late going through the data mining and looking for constants. And thank you so much for sending your dream data in. And yes, we've had some hits. Now, China is still huge again. I don't know what's going on there, but China is huge again on this bi-week frame. It's huge again. I don't know why. People are dreaming about being in China. People are dreaming about seeing Chinese people. People are dreaming about... they're not negative, they're not positive. Some are negative, some are positive. Most are just an awareness of Chinese things. Some people have dreamt about Chinese monsters, like demons, like the one that went after, what's his name, Bruce Lee. So China is still really, really strong in this experiment. And that this week again was biggest, and it was the biggest in the last 2 weeks ago as well. So we'll let this run for 2 weeks, and then I'll keep gathering your latest dream data, and we'll come back in 2 weeks. But we got a definite hit on Barcelona. The second one is buses. About 7 people specifically mentioned bus journeys, and specifically mentioned bus journeys. Now, they were all the same. They were very interesting. The bus journeys had a constant that the destination was never arrived at. Some people had a dream they were on the bus and the bus never went to the stop they wanted it to go to. And it's unusual. People don't usually dream about buses. They most constantly dream about trains a lot, or planes. Another one was, one person said they went to get on the bus at the bus stop and the bus driver refused to take his fare and let him on the bus. And other ones, there was 2 other ones where people were waiting for buses. One of them, the bus never came, and the other, an empty bus went by them without stopping. So that's the theme. People have been, that's the new theme this week that I've seen, the constant. People have been dreaming, you guys have been dreaming about buses that don't get to their destination or don't pick up their passengers. You either are on the bus and you don't get where you want to go, or you try to get on the bus, it doesn't arrive, it drives past the bus stop, or the bus driver doesn't let you on. So interesting. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen. Like, we probably got lucky with the Barcelona thing. But who knows, in the 2-week time frame. But in 2 weeks from now, let's look now keep an eye on China, see if something's simmering there. But also, and it's bloody strong how the China thing is coming in there. And also keep an eye on the buses. Let's hope there's nothing terrible happens, like there's a bus crash or some people die, or, well, unless it's a busload of politicians goes over a cliff, then that's great. Once the bus driver escapes. But let's hope it's something not like that. But it is very significant, the whole thing of it not reaching its destination. That's tremendous. All the dreams, in one way or another, it was an unfulfilled. In every way, actually, all of them. The bus journey itself was unfulfilled. That sounds very powerful to me. So we watch the buses, or we watch for bus stories in the media in the weeks to come. So that's it. keep an eye on China and watch the buses. Now, keep the stories coming into me. Even though I can't answer most of you, I can't answer them. I appreciate your email and I copy and paste it. The thing is to keep it as succinct as possible. So, hi Thomas, I was thinking about this, Thomas, I was thinking about that, and what that, Thomas. Just begin the email. Say, Thomas, here's my latest dream. Write the dream out and that's the end of it. I don't need to know what you had for dinner, what you were thinking about. I just want the dream data itself. I mean, most of you have been very good and you've been very good that way. That's exactly what you've done. But keep that one going. I'm really appreciating that. Because I'm not aware of anything like this. Oh, maybe it has been done. I mean, over in the past. I'm not aware of anything like this ever been done that I know of. That has ever been done like this in the world of radio. And thank you again for listening in enormous numbers. It's the whole program since it started on sleep and dreaming. It just the show is just the numbers have just jumped, jumped through the roof. Now the theme for tonight's show was originally going to be, and I'll get into that starting now, Mary Shelley's book Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. Now this book is quite remarkable, but there are lots of synchronicities and things that speak to us about today's world. And this is the thing about the most powerful art of all, that it's when art is truly great, it has several things in common. Firstly, it's produced by an unlikely person. Secondly, it's usually attacked or savaged by the critics of the day. And thirdly, it becomes almost like a culture changer. It changes the world. It's an act of magic. It is the true craft. And Mary Shelley's Frankenstein covers all that. Now, the story of the creation of the tale of the novel itself is amazing. Now, even though it was written by Mary Shelley, who was, married to Percy Shelley, and it's very much a European, a Germanic novel. It's very much, and this Mary Shelley was well known for writing travelogues, and she was an expert on traveling through Germany and through Central Europe. But even though she's a British writer, it's very, very much a Germanic story. And my re-interest in the novel derived from part of my enormous amount of work putting into the Walpurgis Night series of books that takes me all kinds of places. And the links and the dots and everything, they connect like you would not believe. And so the book, well, Mary Shelley, along with Lord Byron, John Polidori, who was also a writer, as you know, Byron was right, and her husband Percy Shelley, began travelling through Europe in 1814. This was the beginning of the Grand Tour. This is also the same time during the Romanticism era when Turner went to Europe. Roads had been greatly improved by Napoleon's conquest of Europe, and so travelling was safer, especially after the Battle of Waterloo. It was safer in English people to travel through Europe. And so she journeyed along the Rhine, the river in Germany, which I've done myself, and she came to a place called Frankenstein's Castle. Now, Frankenstein's Castle really does exist, and it's in a part of Germany that I only briefly visited, but I want so much to go back there. It's in the Odenwald, and it's a mountain range. It's the soul of the Germanic soul. And those of you who have read my book, Walpurgis Night, how I talk about the gestation of the Teutonic hexan, that occultic aspect of the Germanic soul, which was gestated within the brooding and deep and dark forests of the Saxon and pagan and early Germanic, Druidic soul, took place in those mountains, in those forests. It is the epitome of that. and the area is absolutely saturated with mythology, stories of wild women that are, like a kind of a female version of the Green Man, of werewolves, of vampires, of the devil living in one particular part of the mountain. Right? It's very similar to. It's very similar to the Ohio Valley in West Virginia, Ohio, where the Mothman and all that takes place. It's one of those hotspots, and it's one of those places where they're very ancient. In the case of the Ohio Valley, the Indians, the natives, and the immigrants, Scots, Irish, Germans, and so on. Well, the same thing in this part of Germany, in the Odenwald, and that's where Frankenstein's is located. A tremendous place. An alchemist called Johann Conrad Dippel lived in the castle. He was born there, and he was a professional alchemist by birth. And he created something called Dippel's oil, which was an animal oil, which was an animal-based process of oil that was the elixir of life. So the idea was that this guy Dippel, through his interest in both anatomy and alchemy, had created an oil that would allow him to reanimate the dead. And so Mary Shelley was in this castle, so you can see the gestation was in there. Now, another thing that happened at that period was that there was also something that was all the rage then, and it was called it was along with it. It was called galvanism, and galvanism was firing electric shocks into dead bodies, mainly animals. And they were discovering through galvanism, they were discovering how the nervous system worked. The first initial experiments were done with a frog's legs. It's quite famous. But they were also firing large electric shocks into dead bodies to try and reanimate them. And so it wasn't a brand of science, it was a brand of occult. You see, when Mary Shelley created Frankenstein, science didn't even really exist. You had natural philosophy, and it was going to be a long time before Louis Pasteur and all these types of people who really brought science to the fore were to come along. Science as we know it didn't exist back then. There was alchemy, and then there was natural philosophy, and so it's the first science fiction novel. That's the most amazing thing about it. The first work of science fiction was created by Mary Shelley on this tour with these other figures of the Gothic movement. Now, how the book came about was let's go through the timeline. In 1814, they began a journey, and by 1816, they were living in Switzerland and inside in Germany, and that 1816 was when the book was written. Now, the book came out of a competition out of their boredom to try and create the best ghost story. And Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein out of this competition between the four of them, a best horror story. And she had this dream. The book began as a dream while they were in this lodge house. They were staying at this place. Now, what makes that really interesting is it happened in 1816, and 1816 is a very significant year because it was known as the year without a summer. What happened was there had been a major volcano I think it was in Indonesia or in the Philippines, in that part of the world, Southeast Asia, that had covered the whole earth in a volcanic ash. And so you had the world shrouded in what was a Gothic mist. This is why Turner's paintings also have those incredible sunsets, because the residue from the fallout from the volcano hung in the air forever. If you I went to visit the Tate Britain in London there a few years back and looked at Turner's sketchbooks that he'd done in Hyde Park and around London of the sunsets, and they're incredible. And this was because of the particles in the air. It also created fog banks that hung over the British Isles and hung over places like Yorkshire. And the fog was constant. And this is where the Gothic novel came from, the whole Gothic culture, shrouded in the mist during this year without a summer. It just goes to show you how a volcano on the other side of the world can actually trigger enormous changes in culture. During this year without a summer, it was cold and it was foggy, and it gave birth to Frankenstein. And so she wrote the story, and they agreed it was the best, came back to England, and the book was initially published anonymously. The second edition had her name on it, because there was prejudice against female writers back then, especially a young woman writing a book like this, and it got horrific reviews that only a sick mind could have come up with the usual things. You always know greatness because it gets attacked by the establishment of its day. But the character of Victor Frankenstein, which develops in it, is an interesting allegory for a lot of the things in the world today. In the book, he's born in Naples to a wealthy Geneva family. That ties in with the whole Templars thing and Octagon and the black nobility. His name is Frankenstein, and that comes from the rock of the Franks. The Franks were the ones who Christianized Europe by the sword. They killed the Saxons at Verdun, the bloody verdict. The Victor represents a character who's obsessed with everything. Now, he goes to the University of Ingolstadt, which is interesting because that's where Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati originated from. So it ties in all these different things, and he creates a monster. Now, the style that the book is written in is very interesting. It's called an epistolary form, and what that is, it basically documents letters between Captain Robert Wilson and his sister Margaret Walton Somerville about their experiences in the North Pole, and that becomes significant later. The creature is never referred to by any name. It's always called the monster, the vile thing, except in a reading of it that Mary Shelley gave once, where she called him Adam, like Adam and Eve, and that was kind of interesting. But the story itself, the creature is basically a deformed, because Frankenstein is not as great a genius as he thinks he is, and his access to bodies is so limited that because of all the limitations by stitching and gluing the body together and the organs, the creature ends up 8 feet tall and hideously deformed. And what happened was, I spoke about this in Defeat the Demons, that Frankenstein was obsessed with this idea of creating the absolute perfect man, absolute perfection. And in the end, he ended up with a hideous monster. The hideous monster also was resentful for his creation. Now, in the films, it's done by electricity. In the book, it's not. It's done by a kind of an undetailed chemical description. But the creature, which is around 8 feet tall, becomes the shadow. See, for a young woman to have written this back in those days. The woman was an absolute genius on every level, and also the fact that she was guided by dreams, and this is what we're all talking about now, isn't it? Dreams. That his quest for perfection had created a shadow in his own life. So there's all kind of metaphors there. And during the book, they come together, fall apart, and at one point the monster's living in the mountains, and he wants Frankenstein to make him a female mate. The monster has learned to speak language because he's lived near a family, and he listened to them every day, and he tried to be friends with the family and became terrified of how he looked, and so on. So the creature demands a female companion from him, and he agrees and so on, but it never happens. There's a kind of a race goes on while the female, he's working on, when Frankenstein has to go to the Orkney Islands off Scotland to make the female monster. He has all these weird nightmares and premonitions that he might be breeding a master race that could plague mankind. Just think about this. 1816, this woman was coming up with this. So he destroys the female monster, and then he runs away, ends up in Ireland, is arrested for a murder of a friend. He's acquitted, returns back home, and the monster follows him. But what's really interesting about this, the monster also kills his fiancée, Elizabeth. So it's the shadow thing again. So it kills the beauty in him by trying to create perfection. But this was done before science was invented. And Mary Shelley was, in this narrative form of this book, was outlining the neuroses of the scientist that we see today. Because at the very end of the novel, Victor Frankenstein develops a neuroses about the North Pole where the monster lives. And he's obsessed with killing his creation in the North Pole. So the book ends in the North Pole. But it's almost like science today has ended in the North Pole, because they backed everything into this global warming thing, and they said that the ice sheets would melt, be long melted by now. And this year we had the largest ice sheets ever. And the insanity of modern science is seen within the minds of not only these scientists who say, we have the greatest war, the world is in danger of boiling, but they've also had this neuroses about the North Pole in the past. And they've also had this neuroses about global dimming, the year without a summer, of a volcano. It's almost like she created an alchemical work in the book of Frankenstein that predicted the neuroses of modern science, transhumanism, genetic engineering, a neuroses about global warming and ice caps melting, a neuroses about the ice caps expanding, a neuroses about global dimming. It really is absolutely remarkable. And the way it's told from the narrative of a story of a ship's captain. Now, we spoke about earlier on the show how a lot of you guys had been sitting around and you had these dreams, and yet she had this dream of the future. And in her dream she noted that I saw a pale student of the unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life, and steer with an uneasy half-vital motion. Frightful it must be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any inhuman endeavours to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world. She's giving us a warning right there about transhumanism, and she's giving us a warning right there about genetic alteration. In 1816, in the year without a summer, and this is the year without a summer, isn't it? For so many of us. And that'll be next year. That book will be 200 years old next year. And 1916 was the year without a summer. You had the worst parts of the First World War. You had the horrors of Verdun. The Somme was 1916. All the battles on the Eastern and the Western Front. Russia fell apart and began to fall apart in 1916, led to the Soviet Revolution. And here we are, coming up to 2016 next year. And I think we're going to see some very powerful world changes, because Mary Shelley's Frankenstein proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that all art is magic and all magic is art. So keep dreaming that dream. Send me your dream stories and take part in magic. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and feck 'em if they can't take a joke.